have a Nissan Navara 2012 in the workshop. It's got an engine light coming on while driving, and this is a 3-liter V6 turbo diesel. The engine's pretty compact, you can't really tell much, but yeah, it's a 3-liter V6 Nissan Navara 2012. So we're just gonna do some EGR testing today. So basically, customer complaint is just the engine light. She came in to check it out why the engine light is flashing. So I quickly scanned the code, and it had an EGR system fault. So what I did, usually what I like to do is I usually clear the fault code, and then I'll take it for a drive. Like if it's a hard fault, you'll come back straight away. You don't even really have to drive it. As soon as you turn the key on, the fault code usually come back. But this one didn't do that, so I had to take it for a drive, and didn't even go too far. Maybe 5 minutes into driving it, the fault code was back. So usually with the performance fault codes, let's say if it doesn't really have a wiring issues or the electrical issues, shorted to ground, or missing power, usually if it doesn't have that sort of fault, I usually like to call it a performance fault, which usually take 2 ignition cycles for the fault code to come back. So usually when I go for a drive, I go for a quick run, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then turn the car off and back on, and drive it back to the shop. And by the time I get back to the shop, usually that's enough for the fault code to come back. That's a performance style fault code. If there is a fault code like electrical base fault code, they usually come back straight away as soon as you turn the key on. So here today I think we're dealing with some sort of performance fault. Even if the electricals are working, for some reason it's not doing its job like the computer wants to see. And there's a lot of different ways the computer will monitor that EGR system. On different cars, it's a different style, different design, so I can't really tell exactly how they do it on this particular vehicle. I know a lot of the GM vehicles, they use MAP, manifold absolute pressure sensor, and MAP sensor to monitor the EGR flow and such like that, but I'm not too sure how every other car does it. So we're just gonna attack it just as a normal, usual EGR system, and we see where we will take us. So I got my scan tool hooked up in the car, so I just finished my driving, so I'm gonna go back to the fault codes quickly. I go back to the car and see if there's a fault codes in the system. Came back, so we are in Australia, so let's just go Australia. We just go Navara, maybe Thailand build. It's a D40, and it's a 2012, so let's try that. So we go diagnostic, we go select the control unit. We'll just go directly into the engine computer, and then we'll just read codes, and there you go, we got a P0488. I'll just zoom in into that screen for you guys a little bit so you can see better. Yeah, P0488, it's an EGR system fault. So from here, where do we go next? So I'll probably like to see if I can do some activation tests, see if we can do that. So let's go to active test and see if we got any EGR, and surprisingly this one does not have a EGR activation. Thank you, Nissan. Makes my job even harder. So EGR cooler bypass right here, you see. I don't think that's anything to do with EGR activation. Looks like just for the EGR cooler. Let's just go in there, see what it does. We just select one data and we just go back and see what. Ignition on, engine stop, restart that. I heard some relay clicking under the bonnet, but I don't think that's our EGR. I don't think that's our EGR, so let's just go back. Active test is no good to us. I'll see if I can find any live datas. All signal. I'll just start the car quickly. Alright, I got a EGR. Let's just select all the EGR live datas. Let's see what else we can see here. That one looks like the exhaust gas pressure sensor. I don't think it's really to do with the EGR. There's your exhaust pressure voltage. I don't really think there's anything necessary. There's the EGR position sensor voltage. Just select that. And yeah, that's all we got. So it says the EGR status is on, so I believe that's working. Computer trying to activate it. EGR cool bypass, I'm not sure what it is. It says inactive, so we will come back to that if we have to later, so we're not going to worry about that. And EGR position voltage, and it's staying at 3.75, so I'll just give it a quick rev up and down and we'll see if that position changes with the rev. As you can see on our EGR position sensor voltage, that did not move at all. I revved it a couple of times, didn't move at all, so I really don't know. Could be our scan tool faulty, it's not reading properly, because it's just an aftermarket auto. So I don't have any more data to show here, so I can't do a bypass test, so I really don't know what we can do here with the scan tool. Obviously scan tools no hope today. So I'll just think about what I'm gonna do next, and then we will do some more testing. I'll get you back on the video very soon. Thank you. Alright, what I'm going to do next is I want to check the mass airflow sensor. I've had few cars do that to me, especially GM vehicles, and I had Isuzu D-Max did that. I had Toyota Hilux did that, where when your mass airflow sensor is dirty, they can throw EGR fault too. So I'm just going to quickly check if it's dirty. Alright, I'm just going to get this air box out and have a look, because this mass airflow sensor is built into that air box. Okay, sure. Alright, I got the air box out the way. So what we're looking at here is the filament inside there. See if you can see it in there. Just looking at that hot wire. Not all mass airflow sensor you can clean it, but this one to me looks pretty clean. I don't see much dirt in it. Just trying to show you guys that hot wire in there somewhere. Yeah, it looks pretty clean. I'm not too worried about it, so I'm just gonna move on to my next test. Now, I have seen cars with which has intake leaking, like a intercooler hose, you know, intake manifold, things like that. When they got a crack on the hose or they're leaking, I have seen that also throw EGR fault for some reason. So while we have the air box off, we're just going to quickly do a smoke test. Let me just set up my smoke tester. This is positive and negative. It'll turn the machine on. And I got the little adapter came with the machine. We're just gonna put it in the intake, and basically you just pump this balloon looking thing, put it in the intake, and we're gonna put our smoke through this hose. So I'm just gonna put that in that intake. Put that in that intake just like that, and we're just gonna blow this, so it will be sealed in that intake hose. And then we just let that machine heat up a bit. So we're just gonna turn the smoke on. So now we got the smoke coming out of it. Just gonna stuff that into this hose here and fill the intake with smoke. Just put this aside for a second. And we just wait to see if anything leaks intercooler hose or, you know, anywhere near the intake manifold, turbo. We'll just wait for it to fill it up with smoke, and we'll go from there. Alright guys, I can see some smoke coming out of this area here. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see the smoke pouring up from under there. And I had a quick look underneath. It's your intercooler. Intercooler's got a little split on it, little hole on it. So that's what it's coming out of the front of the car, just behind the grill here, from the intercooler for the turbo. Now at this point, if you find the mass airflow sensor was dirty, you can clean that up and then take it for a drive and see if the fault code comes back. And we know we got a turbocharger leak, the intercooler leaking, boost pressure there, so that also can bring your EGR fault code up. So definitely you can fix them as well and then proceed from there. But just for the video, just for the training purpose, I will continue, and I'll probably attack the EGR valve itself now and show you guys how I do it, and then we go from there. So for that reason, I will need my scope hooked up to check the powers, grounds for the EGR. This one has a EGR, electronic EGR. So I'll just show you where that located at. So basically down here, that's the plug for the EGR. It's got 5 wire, and just that whole piece here, it's pretty hard to see, but where I'm pointing at, that's your EGR unit, and then you got a EGR cooler here on the side with the 2 coolant hose going side by side, and then this pipe runs into the intake manifold from the EGR valve. So basically it's in a tight spot, but it's quite a basic design. So we're probably gonna attack that and see where we go from there. Okay, before we get into testing EGR, I just wanna take everyone to the basics, basics of how the EGR system works, especially the electronic ones these days. So basically, there's 2 different types I've seen most common, how they do EGR operation in car. So I'm just gonna show you the first type. Okay, now on the board you see there's 2 types of drones. So the top one is a pretty older design compared to the bottom one. The top one basically has a 12-volt feed all the time from the battery, not all the time with the ignition on. So EGR valve is pretty much an electronic motor, so it needs power and earth, right? So it's getting power all the time, and then the ECU controls the motor how much to open and close with a duty cycle square wave 012 square wave duty cycle pattern. That's how it works. So when you're testing it, you basically check for the power right on this pin. If you got a 12 volt, then move on to the next one and put it on a lab scope, and you'll see a square wave whenever the ECU is controlling that EGR. Now with the bottom bottom style, both wire goes to the computer. So on this one there is no positive and negative. It's an electrical motor, so you can wind it one way and you can wind it the other way if you change the polarity of the positive and negative. So there is no positive or negative, so the computer can feed 12 volt into this wire or this wire and switch it to earth accordingly whenever it needs to adjust the EGR valve position. So on this design, what we do, I usually like to put lab scope on both wire and see what type it is, and sort of give me an idea, okay, what design this EGR might be. So on this design, don't be fooled. You can put power and earth on both wire if you need to. It's not going to hurt ECU. I've done it many times. So it just which way the motor is going to turn, which way the valve is going to go, open or close. And computer does it precisely in this design compared to the one at the top. Right? So on EGR, usually you'll have 5 wires. So on the plug, if you see, you'll see 5 wires on the plug. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the 2 wires will be for the EGR motor and 3 wires will be for the position sensor, because they have position sensor, EGR position sensor built into the EGR itself. So that's why they have this extra wire. So we don't really need to worry about it. Yes, there might be times where your position sensor might be bad, and you know, I've never seen one bugger up, but these 3 wires, you just treat it like a potentiometer. So it's like a throttle position sensor. You just treat it like that. It's like a manifold absolute pressure sensor. They all work on the same principle. And on this one, you probably see a 0 to 5 volt signal. So 0 as in low voltage, 5 as in high voltage, as in high pressure, or high position is higher. So usually if you put a scope, you'll know which wire is what, because on these 2 wires you'll see 12 volt and earth probably, or duty cycle like this. But if you put your leads onto these 3 other position sensor wire, you'll probably see 0 to 5 volt signal, 5 volt maybe, and earth. So you'll know you're in the wrong wire when you're testing the EGR valve itself. So that's what we're going to do on this car. I don't really need a wiring diagram because they all work the same. So I'm just going to go one by one on each wire, and I'll find the right wire, and then I'll take you guys from there. Alright, like we discussed on the whiteboard earlier, that's our EGR valve. I got my 2 leads, oscilloscope lead, hooked up to red and a blue wire on that connector. The bottom 3 wire here is your pressure sensor, the position sensor wire, and the back 2 red and the blue wire is your EGR valve control wires. So I got 2 channel hooked up, and we're gonna see what's the signal, what's the output coming out of the ECU. So I'll get you back on the screen in a second. So I got my 2 channel, blue and red, plus minus 20 volt scale. So what I'm gonna do is just turn the key on and let you guys see what it does. Well, that didn't do much, so I'm just going to start the car. Yes, that's better. So I didn't have a good connection on that back probe. So now we got some signal. I'm just going to change the time. Alright, so as you can see at the moment, the blue trace is going from 0 to 12 volts, so basically it's a duty cycle square wave. But if you wait a little bit, the bottom red trace will also act like a power, like you just saw it there. They can switch power and earth interchange when it needs to change the position back and forth. So in this particular design, like I explained to you on the whiteboard earlier, yeah, you can put power and earth on the both wire, and the both wire goes to the computer, so the computer is switching back and forth power and earth. So now we know this, the wiring is good, the computer is trying to control this EGR, so we're not really focused on the wiring and the computer itself, computer control. Now we're going to focus on EGR valve itself. So from here what I'm going to do is I'm going to put power and earth on that EGR valve manually. So I'll do it while the car is running. Doesn't matter, I don't know which way is the valve's going to move, because like I said, it can have power and earth on both wires, so I don't know which way the valve's going to move when I put power and earth. So we're just going to switch the power and earth once we try one way or another way, and then when the car is running, if the EGR valve is actually opening physically inside, that we can't see at the moment without pulling apart things, the engine will try to stall, or it will go really rough, or sometimes it will stall. That means it's pulling the exhaust gas into the intake, if that makes sense. But if it's not changing revs, or engine doesn't try to go rough, we know that valve's physically not open, or there is a lot of carbon buildup, and the pores are choked with carbon. That's why there's not enough flow even if the EGR valve's open, if that makes sense. So I'm going to show you that test quickly. So for this test I'm going to need some jumper wire, so let me grab some jumper wire. So now I have my jumper wires connected to battery. So this is my earth and this is my power directly connected to battery. So I'm just going to put the power and earth on that valve itself and we'll see what it does. You can hear that motor running, the EGR valve running, so that means we know the electrical part of the EGR valve is doing something. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to start the car and do the same thing. I'm going to energize that EGR and see if the engine go rough. Alright, I'm going to energize that EGR now. And engine doesn't seem to go rough or try to stall, so I'm going to switch the polarity of the power and earth. I just turned the engine off both ways. Either I feed power and earth interchangeably. Didn't make a difference. The pump, the EGR valve still making that noise. So at this stage, I think there's something wrong in that EGR valve, whether it's not opening the valve or it's just blocked. So I'm gonna see what I can do there, and I'll get you back on the video. Alright guys, I just pulled a little pipe that runs on top of that motor, this one here, that just goes from your EGR to your intake manifold. Just pull that pipe off so we can sort of physically see the EGR valve itself in there. Right in there you can see the stem, valve stem there, and the valve sits just, you can see the little hat, the valve itself. Right now it's closed. The port is closed. So basically you got your EGR cooler here. The EGR exhaust gas comes from this way through there, through the EGR cooler and back in there, and that's where you got that. It's where you got that valve sticking out there. I'm just trying to get the focus right there. You can see a lot of carbon buildup in there. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put power and earth in that EGR and see if that moves. I'll get you focused there. I'm just going to put power and earth. You can hear the EGR coming on. I'll just switch the polarity quickly, see if that makes it any different, because we don't know which way it's opening and which way it's closing. So I'm just going to switch the polarity quickly. So I'm just going to put power on earth again, and still not moving. And you can hear the EGR going. This is how I diagnose the EGR faults. If you guys know some other ways you do it, just let me know in the comment section. Alright, I got a new EGR valve. This is a genuine from Nissan. Pretty expensive valve, to be honest. Now I'm just gonna go through this a little bit with you. So basically at the top you got your connector. That's where I'm putting my jumper leads. I'm just gonna feed power and earth to you and see if this valve moves, and the same way I was showing it to you on the engine. That valve there in that hole, so that's a valve stem, and that's your valve. If you look on the other side, you can see the valve. So we're just gonna see if this valve moves if we put power and earth, just to prove our test. Earlier we did. So just gonna get you focused there, and I just got my jumper. I just got my jumper pack, and with just a power probe, I'm gonna put some power and earth into that connector. So I'm just gonna feed, I don't know which way it's gonna go where, I'm just gonna feed power now. And if you can see or not, I can see it, I can hear that valve's moving. So I'm just gonna switch the polarity of the power and earth, and let's see what it does. I think that's just trying to close. I'm just going to go back to the way I had it, power and earth. I think that's the way it's going to work. So I'll get you guys focus in there, and I'm going to put power. Can you see that? I'm just going to turn it around so you can see it better on that side. See that valve's opening and closing? That we did not see on the EGR valve. That's still in the car. So yeah, that's how I do a EGR valve diagnosis.